Aaron Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
All right, you guys ready? Let's see, 8 o'clock. No, it's supposed to be 7. All right, hey everyone. Multitasking. Good to see you. It's 9:30. I'm actually on time. So we're talking about the weather, obviously, coming up here for the next 2 to 3 days because we do have some severe weather that will be around. We'll take a look at the newest data and find out if we are going to have a little threat of tornadoes around Oklahoma and surrounding areas. So thanks for joining me. Make sure you like and share the video. Tell your friends and family about AT's weather. Make sure you download my weather app. It is free. Apple and Google Play. It will let you know that tornadoes are approaching your area if a storm were to have one. It'll give you extra time to seek shelter. It's free. It's on Apple and Google Play. Just look for AT's weather and it should pop up. Otherwise, I think we're going to give a couple seconds here and then we'll get started. So, okay, let me put the little link here, obviously. Also, I should say, in the Facebook broadcast channel. That way, when I do go live, because sometimes when I do cover severe storms with tornadoes, I may, log on, then log off. Log on, then log off, depending on what time of the day, because obviously the deal is, since I'm just going to track tornadic storms, if a storm isn't going to produce one or it's stopped doing so or whatever, then I may log off for a while and wait till another storm decides to come up. So it could be several hours, could be 30 minutes, you never really know. But if you log on and you join the Facebook broadcast channel, which is in the links in the comment section, I'll notify you when that does happen. That way you won't miss anything. And obviously, whenever you go live like this, you won't miss anything as well. So thank you for the stars out there on Facebook world. I see you, Cindy. I see you, Sherry. Thank you very much, ladies. Who else we got? We got David. Appreciate you, brother. Casey. Thank you, sir. And Rhonda. Hey, Ferguson. What's up? You guys ready to get some hail damage to repair? So Ferguson Roof Systems, they sponsor my broadcast. They've been doing that for years. They're awesome. 5-star company. Can't beat them. Super nice. And they do the job right. So I like good people. So check them out if you have any roof damage, roof needs. And you're probably going to be one of those here over the next couple of days because you're going to have to get some hail at some point, right? It's Oklahoma and it does happen. And your insurance will thank you for it. I'm joking about that. Insurance. Don't even get me started, right? Okay, guys in YouTube land, thanks for tuning in. See you in the comments section. Appreciate it. Miss Jody will be in there chatting with you. Same thing for you guys on Rumble. And also now for you guys on Twitter. So thanks again for tuning in there. So Twitter is fully restored. I should have a subscriber option for you on Twitter here soon. So it's slow to get all that stuff approved. And I don't know what that's going to do other than that fact that's an option. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, with all that housekeeping out of the way, again on Facebook, I'll put that link one more time in the comments section if you want to join the broadcast channel. That way you don't miss any live updates. There you go. Okay, that's it. So let's go on to some data, shall we? New stuff came in here. I just kind of took a little peek at it. Currently, I've got 68.5 degrees, so it's another nice evening out there as far as temperatures are concerned. I do kind of like these evenings, honestly. That's kind of my cup of tea. We do have a storm system we talked about coming up in the water vapor channel of the satellite view. It's this little guy spiraling around right here. It's our upper level low. And believe it or not, it's still not on shore in California, which means our balloon sounding network that we launch across the country still won't fully sample the storm, although it's going to get some of it. It'll get the northeastern and eastern quadrant, and there's usually an effect right here in the subtropical jet that usually passes overhead, so we'll sample this from Mexico. So you do get a little taste of the storm. You just don't get the entire thing, but you get enough to where you're getting into that high resolution data. We can take advantage of that and kind of see a little bit better accuracy on the output of how things will evolve. So that's a little meteorology one-on-one. Just remember, garbage in equals garbage out. So we don't have good data coming in. You cannot have good data going out. Now, today we had, depends on where you were, kind of cool, maybe kind of warm. South and southwest Oklahoma, a little bit warmer. We do have a little bit of a cold front. It's a weak one. Dew point values are into the 50s and even 40s behind it. And if I do just a little rough sketch something about like so, you will notice it kind of cuts Oklahoma City Metro in half. So if I put this into motion, let me clear that screen, hit the play button, watch this little fine line that shows up in the data, like right here, and then it moves south just a little bit. Did you make that out? I'll let it play one more time. Clear that out. Let's go back a few more frames. Because there you go. There's that little line right there. So anyway, it's a cool little front. Shows up on the radar. Because what happens is it's the difference in air mass for density, and of course a little bit of temperature. And so when the radar beam hits it, it bends across that boundary, and it shows up really well in the data right there going through. Anyway, point being is that is our line in the sand, if you will, to get some showers and a few thunderstorms to develop overnight tonight. And those will move off to the north and east. Otherwise, temperatures out, like I said, are in the 60s and 70s, not too bad. So here is the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. So let's talk about the threat for tomorrow. Now, they do have a hatched area here for tornado across western Oklahoma, into the Panhandle into southwestern Kansas, and then a 2% and 5% here ring over in this area of the state on into Texas as well. Now, I don't want to argue too much, but I will say I would cut this off to about here. And I would leave this out because I don't think much is going to happen, especially in western Oklahoma. We'll show you the data here in a second. And then I would extend this into this region overnight for Thursday night. So I'd make some adjustments to the storm outlook from the Storm Prediction Center as a result. Let's take a look at what the AI seems to think is going to happen. And they like the higher threat, which kind of matches the Storm Prediction Center up here with yellow shading across northwestern Oklahoma into the Panhandle and across the body of Kansas for their little tornado risk. This little area here is highlighted for hail, and this one down here for wind. And this usually cuts off, and this is where the kind of the forecasting time frame kind of differs, because usually when you're talking about severe weather, you're talking about during the daylight hours into the early evening, and then it kind of cuts off for the overnight period. Well, that'll be a little different this time around. We'll have some overnight stuff. And if you look into the extended, as we head into the Friday period, it does have kind of most of it now, kind of the eastern half of Oklahoma into Arkansas, Missouri. So there's your threat there for a potential tornado area, according to the AI models. If you look at the area for Saturday, now that area has expanded quite a bit across most of the body of Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, even down to northwest Texas, back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then on the right, this is from the Storm Prediction Center. This is where they have it. So they don't really differ too much from this model. You see this kind of expand a little bit more to the north, and they will massage it as new data comes in. If we look at the analogs, in other words, we try to look at storm systems in the past that match the pattern pretty good. It won't be an exact match, but it's enough to where there's some correlation. We can look at where the tornado risk would be, again, facing a similar pattern. So here's Thursday. You can see where the tornado puts a low probability, 5-10% out here in the Panhandle of Texas, far western Oklahoma, and then up here into Kansas and northeast Colorado. If we look at Friday, that area shifts to the north and east from Tulsa into Kansas, just a little tail end, really down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, ironically. All right, but remember, that's very low, 2%. The scale goes up to 60%, so obviously that's a low probability. As we go on to Saturday, it kind of has that bullseye here across the body of Oklahoma, a little bit more to the west than those other forecasts from the Storm Prediction Center and or the AI model did. And then finally, as we go into Sunday, is this for Sunday, the 29th? 28th, let me see. Yeah, 28th. It has it shifted back to the east a little bit. In reality, most of the data has it kind of in this corridor, so we'll see if this ends up being right as far as just an analog comparison. But needless to say, these are all low probability instances so far for potential tornadoes. If we do look at another AI algorithm from NATOcast, and they favor this little area here in southwest Oklahoma, the northeast Texas Panhandle by tomorrow in the late afternoon and evening. And I actually kind of favor this more in my prior forecast discussions. I kind of like this little spot. This is a little overdone, I think, for the daytime hours in this little area, so I'd move that out. In other words, just eliminate this whole section. But as we head into the overnight period, I would have a little bit of a threat, I believe, kind of something like this overnight. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Okay, let's take a look here at the upper levels of the atmosphere. Storm Center is stationed right about here. So very similar to our event on last Monday. And when you have a storm system that's this far removed from Oklahoma, in other words, it's just too far to the west. If it was centered, say, right about here, then we'd be a much different story. It'd be coming out at 7 o'clock right around this area. But because it's late to the party, it's going to come in overnight, and you usually get a cap overnight in this area, and then it's more favorable here for Kansas and Nebraska, just like it did the last time around. Then the cap is going to be a little weaker this time versus last time, and that may make the difference. And we'll look at the data here in a second. But that's our first storm system that comes in for Friday. Let me see if this is far enough for Saturday, because if so, I'll show you what that looks like. Give me some data. So this is Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon. So Saturday afternoon, if you'll notice, is back in this area. So the center of it is right about over the Denver area. So this is also coming in a little bit more to the north and west, rather than a better correlation for us for severe storms. Plus, we have something else that may happen that may mess up Saturday. So we'll see. Saturday's a wild card still. We'll get into that here as well. Okay, so the jet stream aloft, 300 millibars, favors this little area into the Panhandle region up into western Kansas. All right, so if I were to, let's split this like so. So let's take the center of the core of the jet axis, kind of like this. So most of your lift for favorable storm dynamics is going to be in this quadrant, and way down here in this quadrant. And then on this side, usually have sinking motion. So it kind of goes against some of the broad overall lifting of the atmosphere. So in other words, storms are less favorable at this spot, but they would be more favorable on the other side of that. So again, not exactly ideal at kickoff, but close enough in proximity here along the dry line. We should get some stuff in the Panhandle. If we look at the 500 millibar flow, you do have a nice jet streak coming in about that time. Let's go, probably 850. Yeah, pretty good, strong southerly jet here. 30 plus knots. So get a lot of shear for any of those storms that do form. And we're talking about the dry line positioning. So right now the latest data has a dry line pretty much right on top of Amarillo, stretching up north into western Kansas, a little bulge down here into western Texas. So this is the separation where you have dew point values into the 60s and dew point values in the teens. All right, so the teens, in other words, dry air. You can electrocute, your friend by just rubbing your feet against the carpet and touching them, that kind of deal. That's how that dry air works out there. Whereas obviously on the moist side, you can get the thunderstorms. If we do look at the CAPE values, measure of instability as well as the shear, we have plenty of that on the table. So CAPE values up here around 3,000 plus joules per kilogram. That's plenty. And you can see little indications. If you look right here, see that little guy right there, this guy, that's the indication where the storms will fire along the dry line, and we'll see the output here of that in a second. But you can see a nice little wind shear pattern. However, I'm going to do a little forecast point sounding in that region. I want to show you something out here in the Panhandle. This is going to be a problem for those thunderstorms. See this? This is a monster cap out there. So again, because that system's coming a little late, therefore, there's really not the best situation out here in the Panhandle for these storms to form, number one, and for even number two to hang on once they do. They're going to have a really hard struggle. So when we'll get to the output here in a second, here's the significant tornado parameter, meaning what kind of juice those storms have to work with as far as ingredients go. And if we can get one rooted, and boy, it's got to get warmer than 68 degrees, but if we do, then you can eliminate this cap a little bit and take advantage of the overall environment to produce a tornado and some large hail. Hail size up around grapefruit size in some of these analogs. Okay, so now this is all for Thursday afternoon and evening. We do have a cap in place for the rest of Oklahoma, so we're not going to see any storms as far as severe weather in the form of that kind of stuff for late afternoon and evening. We're going to have some early morning, late night, early morning stuff, and I'll show you that here in a second. That's like what we had today. It's not that kind of a event for us for this first wave. And then we'll see what happens after dark on Thursday. All right, so let's talk about the radar. And I'm going to show you the big picture first, and then we'll zoom in to Oklahoma itself. So as we go to tonight, you do notice by midnight or so, we're going to have these little scattered areas of showers and thunderstorms here across the northern half of the state. Remember, that front kind of lies something about like this. So they kind of bubble up on the front, and then they move northeast in the overall southwest flow aloft with the atmosphere. All right, so that's some heavy rain, right? You might even hit rumbles of thunder with that here in central Oklahoma, and you'll probably get some pea-sized hail out of that. You might get some dime-sized hail, so your instabilities will be a little bit higher than they were earlier today, so a little bit of overnight hail in some of these. Otherwise, very heavy rainfall would be the bang deal. And I'm going to show you some of the rainfall totals that this model seems to think may happen. Kind of focus your area here. If this cluster ends up happening, you're probably could have some flash flooding in northeast Oklahoma overnight into early tomorrow morning. All right, so regardless, here is the morning hours, and that's still raining up there from Tulsa, north and east, as that boundary kind of stalls in that area, and that's what's causing that as that front returns as a warm front, as it retreats. Now, by afternoon on Thursday, that activity moves off in Missouri and Arkansas. Again, just a batch of a lot of heavy rainfall. Like I said, maybe it's a little bit of hail mixed in. Then we take a look here with what's going to happen with the Panhandle into western Kansas. If you do notice, you do get some thunderstorms that try to develop here by 6 and 7 o'clock across southwestern Kansas. And then there's a couple here across the Panhandle. Now the cap is a little weaker in Kansas, so those are a little easier to try to develop. But look what happens to the ones down here. They fall apart. They went up, they tried hard, and they just couldn't do it. The atmosphere just wasn't too hostile for them. All right, so let's go into the overnight period. So midnight hour, we see this big batch of thunderstorms that will break the cap. Actually, I'll tell you what, they won't break the cap. They're going to ride on top of it. But they're going to get some brute forcing from the system itself. The reason why I say that is here is that capping layer right here in the atmosphere. So they will have to be elevated. All right, so elevated nature means they can take, use this color here, they can take advantage of this section of the atmosphere, the forecast sound, which is a lot of elevated instability. So you can get some good hail out of that, and pockets of damaging wind, and usually this will kind of form a little bit of a squall line. So if we take a look at that, that seems to be what's happening there, and that's that picture. So let's go on into the 1, 2, and 3 o'clock hour, and you can see how this line expands north into southwestern and central Oklahoma as we head into the 3 and 4 o'clock hour. And that continues on down just north and west of Dallas-Fort Worth. By daybreak here, moving from Tulsa through Fort Worth area back into the hill country of Texas. There's 7 o'clock in the morning, 8, 9. These storms do try to weaken a little bit from Missouri and Arkansas and Texas just because it's the wrong time of the day. The low-level jet has ended. Usually the winds calm down quite a bit, so you've lost a lot of your shear in the atmosphere once you get into that time frame. So that's good news, obviously, for the less severity of the storms. Otherwise, just some rain at that point. Through late Friday morning, that kind of falls apart. And then for the afternoon on Friday, we do have a dry line that'll be moving into central Oklahoma, and it's trying, in the model data, to trigger redevelopment of storms in this little spot here. Let's see, it's having a tough time trying to do it here. It's trying down here around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Those are struggling as well. Part of that is because you end up with what we call a meso high. All right, so meso high basically is an area with stabilized, cooler, high pressure in this area. So that helps stabilize the atmosphere. Now, what can happen, and this we have to watch for on Friday, and we'll look at the dew point map here in a minute, but what can happen here is you get this return flow that kind of goes in this fashion, so kind of an east-southeasterly flow. So if you could get a dry line in this fashion, and you can get far enough away from the cooling of this high, and get a little teeny tiny warm sector in here, you might be able to squeeze off another round of some thunderstorms, and those could be severe. But usually when this happens, it's very hard to do so. And the model here is indicating that it's not going to recover. So that means it's a nothing burger for the rest of Friday afternoon. Even east of there, because of the stableness of the timing, there's no big push in the upper levels to kind of recoup that and get the atmosphere going again, so everything's kind of quiet. And then that'll start us into Saturday morning, and that's where this particular data ends. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in to Oklahoma, and I'm going to see, first off, let me look at another CAM model. These just came in, so I haven't seen them yet, so I want to see what they do here. There's those storms here for tonight, so good indication of some heavy rainfall for sure. Now this one does produce a few more supercells into the Amarillo area points north for 5 and 6 o'clock. And they do go across the border into Oklahoma and Kansas, but they fall apart as they do so. Kansas still seems to be the best spot if you want anything severe-wise, like tornadoes or whatever, which is probably where most of the storm chasers will be. So heading into the overnight period, looks like it does also, by 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, develop this little area here to our west and southwest, and it does blow up into northern parts of the state. So a good squall line broken down from north to south here, moving through Oklahoma during the overnight period, and then weakening in the morning, like the other model had indicated. And then that's off of that one. It doesn't go far enough to see how things are going to go for Friday afternoon yet. We'll do one more here. See if it tells me the same story. Pretty much. So if you've noticed, there's no storms in any of these for western Oklahoma during the day or afternoon or evening, right? Nothing happens until after midnight. And that's when the secondary line starts to get going. All right, same look as the other one. And let me think, is there anything else on here? No. Nope. I will do this though. I'm just curious what the name is going to do for Saturday morning. Saturday, okay. Interesting. Let me see what it's doing for the cap strength on Saturday. All right. So, yeah, we're going to talk about Saturday here in a minute. Okay. Now, the Texas Tech, I like this model as well. See what it does, if anything different from the other cam models. And there you go. There's that signal of a few thunderstorms try to break out in the panhandle, and they fall apart. And then we have to wait for this secondary line that comes in again after midnight and moves through. And you can see these little red lines. These are little helicity tracks, meaning that some of these will have rotation with them for a little bit of large hail, damaging winds, and possibly even a tornado. And let's go to Friday afternoon. Now, this model seems to think we'll recover from that little mesohype around the Tulsa area and into southwest Missouri, and they do have some helicity tracks. So Friday will be a wild card to see if we do get some thunderstorms. They'd be few and far between, but they would rotate. Here's one down here in northeast Texas as well. It starts, looks like, around Rockwall, and then moves north and east before fizzling later on in the evening. So again, we'll have to see how that plays out for Friday. So sometimes it's kind of take these one day at a time, because depending on what happens the day before, it can mess things up the day after, or it can enhance things. You just kind of have to wait and see. But here's a close-up view of Oklahoma we talked about for overnight tonight, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. There's that heavy stuff across northern and eastern Oklahoma, around on the I-40, I-35 corridor seems to be the boundary for the bulk of the heaviest stuff. And that moves out by Thursday late morning. And then here's that activity for the Panhandle for tomorrow around 6. It falls apart. There's another effort that falls apart. Let's see, what else do we have at that? And then we've got Childress southward, 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when things start to bubble up. And you can see how that line starts to creep up north here into central Oklahoma. And you do see these guys right here, these little helicity tracks that do kind of pop up in this. So right now, looking at this model data, this is kind of what it's telling me is likely going to be the outcome. So we will have a squall line. However, it will not be a solid line. There's going to be maybe some embedded supercells within this, and sometimes those can produce the tornadoes. And it can also have on the leading edge QLCS tornadoes, which are little baby spin-ups. So that is in the forecast overnight for that little period of time right here across central and southern Oklahoma. But it also indicates that there's still going to be a lot of a strong capping layer because of the brokenness look to the line. So that tells me that the cap is still holding tight. So it's one of those deals where, you know, the cap may still save us as far as getting surface-based thunderstorms to produce tornadoes. But it's not a guarantee, so it's one of those deals where you're just going to have your NOAA weather radio on overnight. Use my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It'll alert you. Of course, it won't be as loud, so I definitely have the weather radio to wake you up, and then you can use my app to see if it's going to be going to your spot. If you do look at Friday on this particular model, tries to get some storms here and tries to get some storms here going, but it looks like it just didn't destabilize enough to keep them going for Friday afternoon, and that's it for that run there. All right, we talked about the potential for some damaging wind, obviously some large hail with some of these. Now, overnight, the hail usually can't get that large, so we're probably talking up to 3 inches in diameter, so probably more likely 2.5 for the reports that we'll see come in. So that's, you know, it's still big hail, though, like we talked about. Now, down here, if you notice this, it says 80 miles per hour. So what this indicates is there'll be pockets of damaging wind that goes through central Oklahoma around 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. So don't be surprised if you do get a little damaging wind. That's not even tornado related. It's just from straight line winds. And this does extend east from there up toward McAllister and Tulsa as we head on MTD4 in 5 o'clock hour. Even up here in the southern Kansas, there's some winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. So usually squall lines like that can create some strong damaging winds outside of the threat for a QLCS type tornado, and or maybe if it's an embedded supercell that has a tornado in it, right? Okay, so now let's talk about, I'll look at the dry line position for Friday, and we'll look at rainfall totals, because that'd be pretty significant as well. So let's see, on Friday, yeah, the dry line mixes right now in the data, plenty far away east of Oklahoma City. If the dry line, for whatever reason, remember, we still have some time to massage the data. This is Friday, so it's not Thursday. I'm just going to let you know that a lot of times the dry line is pushed too far east. So let's just say that the dry line ends up more like this, okay? And we actually have these dew point values, you know, closer into here of around 70 degrees. If that were to happen, then and we can destabilize things enough in this little corridor, then we could get some thunderstorms Friday afternoon It is a very conditional and a big if, but we'll watch for that potential in after tomorrow's event to see how the dry line pushes. Rainfall amounts that we talked about was pretty excessive if you go with the NAM model. And when I say that is because it really focused those storms overnight and just didn't give you guys any relief. We're talking 12 hours roughly of very heavy rainfall. And so because of that, and because it's convective in nature, it is spitting out to 8-9 inches of rainfall here around the Bartlesville area. There's Tulsa at 3 inches. So I will tell you this, the models will never be that good to pinpoint the exact boundary. But what you want to look at is the signal in the data. And this signal has been increasing little by little because it keeps generating additional showers and storms. Now, this is just one model, and it doesn't have to be right. The point being is there will be widespread 1 to 2 inches of rain, no problem, in this area overnight into tomorrow. Will it be something like that where you're going to have flash flooding? That's potentially possible if it were to come out just like it thinks. Now, overnight storms, it looks like it dumps right here about another ½ inch to an inch from central to southern Oklahoma with the rest of that line. So this is all mostly caused by tonight's and tomorrow morning's event as far as heavy rain with a little bit of hail in there. So be advised of that. All right, let's take a look at beyond these two events. So let's look at the European data. All right, so there's the European. Ironically, the European keeps most of the heavier thunderstorms, looks like, on the east side of the metro and then down south toward a lot, not much happening on the west side. But European is not a convective model, so I won't put too much into that. All right, let's go to Friday. All right, doesn't produce anything in the afternoon. Tries to, and then it just doesn't do it. And let's go to Saturday. Now, Saturday is where things get really interesting. So the system, again, is coming a little late, and the position is a little to the north and west of us, right, for Saturday afternoon, which would help to initiate storms on the dry line, which would be somewhere around the eastern Texas Panhandle. However, in the data for the last couple of days, there has been a significant signal for a strong wave to kick things off Saturday late morning, starting in southwest Oklahoma and then moving into the body of the state. So if that were to happen, you can see a nice squall line right here moving through the I-35 corridor at 1 o'clock. In other words, a very strange time of the day to do so. So here's the deal with this. Now, because this is happening, because the models do not think we will have a cap in place on Saturday. In other words, they think that it's a free-for-all for the atmosphere, the environment, to just go nuts with 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram, and again, no significant cap with the hail analogs up to around 3 inches in diameter, has a risk of a marginal tornado. Now, why would you say only marginal? Well, because that storm system isn't where it needs to be yet. So if you look at the wind field here, it is almost all uniformly from the south. It barely turns to the southwest up around 3.5 kilometers to 4 kilometers. That's not a lot of turning with height in the atmosphere. In other words, that's not enough to spin those storms to produce really good strong mesocyclones. So believe it or not, if this were to be the outcome, it's the best outcome we could have in this type of a situation because the storm comes in, the storms actually themselves start early. They have lower, more uniform shear to work with, so that limits the tornado risk. And the storm system itself, the upper level low, isn't in place yet. So what happens is, we talked about earlier, remember, this will stabilize the atmosphere across this whole area of the state for the afternoon. That doesn't allow us to heat up and to get unstable again. So by 7 o'clock, we would start to see, in theory, some thunderstorms out here along the dry line. But because of what just happened, that may put the kibosh on the whole thing for Saturday. Now, as the storm system moves east overnight on Saturday, again, an overnight period where the dry line in the front push east and it tries to start to trigger some more thunderstorms. But again, it's going over to an atmosphere that was pretty much overly worked. And the cap builds in as a result. So overnight, you have a situation where they're elevated again due to this forecasting layer, and your instability is a lot lower to work with. So it's one of those deals where we might have our second storm system, same thing, overnight, but now affecting the eastern half of the state. And due to the timing of the event earlier in the day, you may not get much out of it other than some weaker thunderstorms. But again, that'll be something we'll have to watch and get into the trends later. So, but I just want to let you know that that is on the table because that right now is what the data is suggesting is going to happen for that period. And if I were to do a total rainfall, by the way, from the European, let's do it right here. The way it has things going right now, It also kind of favors this northeastern quadrant for quite a bit of rain. But you see how it moves the heavy core? Remember that one line was in this region. Now this model's got it down here to the south. There's Muskogee at 3, but just up above you, 8 inches of rain. Southeastern Kansas, quite a bit of rainfall. Down here, South McAllister, there's 5 inches of rain. So this is the whole period, remember, through Saturday night. So obviously you can tell the main story is widespread 1 to 2 inches of rain is not a problem across basically the eastern half of the state, but you're going to get some areas here that may experience some brief flash flooding if we can materialize some of these isolated remote regions up to 8 inches of rainfall. Now let's see if any other models do this. So here's the AI version of the Europeans. It's a smooth approach, and it smooths it out to 2 to 3 inches over a large area, 4 inches in Bartlesville. The American model that also has an interesting little pattern here of 4 to 5 or 6 inches of rain through Tulsa, Bartlesville, northeast from there, and back south of Shawnee toward Pauls Valley. The German model, the Icon, also has that kind of a signature out here around Muskogee and points to the north and east. Hard line in the sand here just west of 35 and 44. UK Met, it also went a little nuts here, 7, 8, 9 inches of rainfall across this area. So are you getting the trend here? It may be a situation where it's not so much tornadoes we're worried about, it's just flash flooding over, good area of eastern Oklahoma during, sometimes, at nighttime is never a good time to have flash flooding. We do a model blend, which is a very conservative approach. It keeps it to a widespread 1 to 2 to 3 inches of rain with pockets here of 4. So what you have to take away is if the data is suggesting and each run's coming in heavier and heavier, you can't ignore it, right? So then you go with the conservative approach, which is the 1 to 2 inches of rain widespread over central and eastern Oklahoma, and you're going to have pockets of 3 or 4. It's a safe call. Anything more than that, you're dealing with some flooding, all right, and flash flooding at that. So if you live in a flood-prone area, just be prepared. That's something you're going to have to deal with. Temperature-wise, for tomorrow, 70s, 80s on Friday here in Oklahoma City, and then 70s after that through the weekend, and then back to around 80s. So pretty much typical standard stuff for this time of the year. If you notice, overnight lows, we don't have any freezes or frost coming up. So I know some of you got nipped Monday morning from that frost and freeze across parts of Oklahoma. It's weird is my thermometer, see, I bottomed out at 43 or 41 degrees, I think it was. But if you went a few miles west or north, it was in the upper 30s or mid 30s. They were all over the place. But anyway, so that's that. If you are late and you missed all of this, basically all we did was dive in to the model data to find out, what the latest trends were. We sampled the storm a little bit better because half of it's being sampled good from our balloon sounding network. The other half still is offshore. That'll come in overnight tonight until tomorrow morning. The data will be way better to work with, just so you know, for this particular storm system, which of course would make sense. It's the day of the event. Right now, Catholics is going to hold across the body of Oklahoma for tomorrow in the afternoon. Even the panhandle of Texas, it looks like there may be a couple of isolated severe storms that'll go. If they do, there is a brief window there for a tornado across the eastern Texas panhandle and the Oklahoma panhandle into southwestern Kansas. Outside of that, the cap's too strong. They should weaken if they try to go into the body of the state. Then we wait overnight for an elevated squall line to get going. Pretty saturated overnight, still a lot of wind shear. This line looks pretty strong. The cap for this particular event isn't as strong Thursday night as it was that Monday. So we may have some storms that do try to touch the boundary layer, get into it. What that means is if we have like a supercell embedded within the squall line, that could produce a tornado. Or we might get some QLCS type tornadoes on the leading edge of that squall line. It will have pockets of wind up around 80 miles per hour. We'll have some hail with it. Hail size can be anywhere from golf ball to 2 inches, maybe even 3 inches at most on the hail size overnight. And then some flooding issues, obviously some flash flooding. And most of that flash flooding may actually end up coming tonight and tomorrow morning across the northeastern part of the state. If we do end up getting several inches of rainfall from just elevated showers and storms that'll develop because of the pattern that we're in here for right now. So once that system is out, it looks like it will stabilize things for Friday. The models are struggling to try to produce any severe weather Friday afternoon across the state, even though we have a dry line right in the middle of it. So right now, that's the trend for there. So knock on wood, that stays the same. Then that way, Friday's fine. Then we focus on Saturday. And right now, the models are saying everything's misaligned, isn't timed right. We'll have a squall line come in midday, like lunchtime, where the wind shear is more uniform. In other words, it doesn't turn with height. like a staircase. It's just more out of the south. And usually when you have a good strong south wind all the way up, that's more of a tropical air mass type, which means you get a lot of heavy rainfall. So yeah, squall line with very heavy rain, pockets of hail and wind is usually what happens with that. Really not much of a tornado threat at all because you don't have enough shear to work with. So it'll be more of a freak event if that were to happen, which is good, obviously, right? And then if that does happen the way that it goes, that stabilizes the atmosphere so that when the main storm system once again comes in late for Saturday, that's mistimed, and we have to wait for an overnight deal for the dry line on the front to kick that stuff off, which right now looks like would be similar to, maybe not the same, but kind of similar to what's going to happen Thursday night, where they start. So kind of blowing up along the I-35 corridor and then moving east with those. And right now it looks like it's still pretty capped, not as much instability. So may not have much of a tornado threat with that at all. It might just be more rainfall, more flash flooding. And so right now in the data, it's starting to suggest this is more of a flash flooding event than it is a widespread tornado event. So, you got to pick your poison, obviously, in those cases. But that's why you don't want to get too, you can't get too detailed and you can't make too many promises in the aspect of severe weather until you get closer to that window, because of all these little intricacies you can see interact with one another, and it completely changes the dynamics of how the output's going to be. And all of a sudden, you can shift your language now. Instead of thinking widespread tornadoes, maybe now you're talking about widespread flooding, which is not what you were promising 5 days ago. So that's why you have to be really careful how you structure this when you're as a communicator as to what's coming. You can tell them there's some storms coming, probably have some severe weather, and then we'll detail it as we get closer. And really, that's all the science allows you to do. Anything more than that is just, bloviating. But right now, that's the latest in the data tonight. Like I said, tomorrow morning we'll have new stuff will come in, and we'll see where it goes from there. So I'll do a lunchtime live at noon for you guys. It'll be like a short one, 10-15 minutes. And let's see. I always say that. I try to make these short. My wife always laughs at me. You always say you're going to be short tonight. And then you start going off on a tangent. What are you going to do? And then I'll do the live on Thursday or Friday for lunchtime as well, and of course I'll be with you over the weekend. So if we do have some tornadoes, I will cover them. However, if we do have anything on Thursday night at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm sorry, I'll probably, like most of you, I'll probably be asleep. But like I said, I know weather radio, I have my app, it'll go off, it'll alert me if something were to happen. I'll pop up out of bed real quick and I can leave stuff going. So if it does look like something will happen, I could probably cover it. Just have to play that by ear, because I don't know about you, but some of us have to work. So I got a 9 to 5er pays the bills I got to do. Let me see here. I'm going to scroll through some of your comments here real quick and thank you a few more stars senders. So Casey, I see you. Joni, thank you for the stars. David, if I didn't call your name earlier, probably because I got shoved on Facebook. Beth, appreciate you sending me some love in that fashion. Ava as well. Make sure you, like Jody says, download my weather app. It's free. Apple, Google Play. It'll predict tornadoes before they occur, giving you more time to seek shelter. Nancy, thank you for the stars. Kristen, thank you. Jeremy, appreciate you, brother. I like it when you guys give back in that fashion, because believe it or not, all this stuff does cost money. David, thank you. Appreciate it as well. When I started, there was no money. There was no stars. There was no nothing for 4 years. So I had to eat it. So thankfully, when you guys get back, it helps to offset all that stuff, and I can put back some money in my retirement, which was not the smart thing to deplete. But hey, you had a vision. You got to go for it, right? So KC, so right now the biggest concern is Thursday night. So you got to take them one day at a time, right? But yeah, as far as our body of the state is concerned, yeah, the daytime is capped, so nothing's going to happen out in western Oklahoma. It's all in the Texas Panhandle, and that's even if they break the cap and they even hang on long enough to do so. And right now the signal's pretty weak for that to even occur. Otherwise, we're looking at the overnight stuff. Some brief heavy rainfall, hail, wind, and yeah, probably a couple of tornadoes overnight for Thursday night. Either the baby ones, QLCS, which is usually EF0, EF1s, 9 times out of 10. It's very hard to get one stronger than that. They're usually very short-lived. They're very quick. And then if we do get embedded supercell within that squall line, which can happen in this environment, if it can get rooted, there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts in this. It could produce a tornado as well, and that'd be a little stronger one, again, assuming a lot of things. So that is more, when you get into that world, it's more of a nowcast event, as in what's happening right now, but to the next 1-2 hours from now. That's kind of where that type of forecasting comes into play, because you can see how the atmosphere's acting, you can see how the cap is holding or not, you can see how different parameters are working. either in favor of stronger severe weather or in less favor, and then you kind of monitor it and that kind of deal. But yeah, otherwise, what you can do here today is give you the big picture, give you the timing, give you the look, how things ought to evolve, and then for those little devils in the details, sometimes that's the day of or the event of, kind of a deal. Beth doesn't like hail. I don't like hail when it hits my car. That's for sure. Other than that, I don't mind it too much. I don't know. Honestly, believe it or not, the only thing that really bothers me on severe weather or weather in general, and it's not tornadoes, believe it or not, it is lightning. And lightning meaning because I was almost struck a couple times. And one year I was a kid, it was right out my window at my grandmother's house, and it scared the crap out of me, almost literally. And so for whatever reason, that and the storm chasing, I get a little too close to lightning, and that's something you don't really come back from. So it's one of those things I don't like. It gives me the heebie-jeebies if I'm out there in it, right? So other than that, I'm fine with the weather, believe it or not. Even though I have dreams of tornadoes sometimes, I do. That's meteorologist for you. And honestly, the worst dreams you have is in the TV world of dreams. So when you're working in TV and you have these nightmares, basically because you're supposed to be on the air at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're in your underwear or something, you couldn't make it to work on time because something happened, and I don't know. There's just nonsense that happens in those dreams. It's just frustrating. Or your weather maps didn't load, and I'm on here talking to a camera. And I got nothing to show you. That's a nightmare. So I barely have those anymore since I've been out of that spotlight for so long. It's finally calmed down, but that's real. Your dreams are terrible in that regard. Okay, so Jody, Miss Tuttle doesn't like thunder or wind. I can account for that. Oh, real quick before I let you go, let me see. There was one more data suite I wanted to look at that came in. Yeah, real quick. Let's just see how these other models did. Because remember, everything comes in late. And so I give you the big picture, and then sometimes I look at the little other ones just to see if anything's changed in the thinking. Okay, so that one's all the same, and nothing on Friday. Okay. Let's go to this one. Alright, same thing there and there. Okay, there's the overnight stuff. And nothing Friday. If there's anything Friday, it tries to get on the original front down here in southern Arkansas, afternoon and evening. And then, I think, 21, yeah, that's it. Everything else is old from earlier today. All right, so that is it, my friends. I'm going to get out of here, so I appreciate you guys watching, supporting me by liking the social media channel that you're on, subscribing to it, sharing the video, telling your friends, family about AT's weather. We'll do the science here. We'll tell you everything about it, ins and outs. And I know a lot of you guys will send me messages, just people what they say. You don't have to do that. And one of them is getting a lot of popular is Reed, right? Reed Timmer. So remember, I have to tell you this. Reed gets excited about any chance of a storm at all, and you have to realize that's his job is to chase severe storms and to chase specifically tornadoes. So he will always get excited over any potential threat of a tornado, no matter how pathetic or weak it will be. He will talk it up because he's trying to manifest it because that's what he does for a living, for his research. He wants to drive his car into it. He wants to shoot his rockets into it. So when you see his posts or his videos and he's going all crazy and nuts, remember, that is the backstory. Dude's awesome. When it's like me and him behind the scenes, it's not like that, right? I mean, we talk about the real science part of it and what's the limiting factor and where's the best place. But remember, on the other end of things, he's really wanting it. So that comes across in his posts and in his video. So just understand that's the filter of which you have to view that. So don't get anxious over it. Just realize that is coming from a guy who's very passionate and wants tornadoes, right? I mean, literally wants them. If he could conjure up tornadoes every day, he would do it. So you have to understand that's the filter you're watching it from. So it's completely different than me because I'm not in that. I don't have that filter. So I have it clear. There it is, and we'll see what happens. based off the data. So that's how I look at it. So just make sure you understand the difference of that. And then anybody else that gets all excited on the internet, remember, if they're storm chasers, same idea. They're going to want that stuff. So everything's going to be through that type of a filter, so you just got to filter it out if it bothers you. All right, that's it for me. Guys, have a great night, and we will see you again tomorrow. And be careful up there in northeast Oklahoma in case there is a little bit of flash flooding from Tulsa, Bartlesville, that whole area. All right, guys, sleep well. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.